Mayor Davis, we are live on YouTube.
All right. So I'd like to welcome everybody to this special City Council meeting called to address the Planning for Canada Day. And so I'd like you, if you're able to please stand as I read the invocation. As we come together today, we recognize the great responsibilities laid upon us. Our council will always strive to understand the needs of the people and to use power wisely and well. Our purpose is to establish and maintain a city of prosperity where and righteousness, where freedom prevails and where justice rules. Let us also not forget those who've served our community and who are no longer with us. So we must continue to do the work that we must in their memory. Please be seated. So today we have assisting us, City Clerk Tanya Daniels, and with assistance from Jennifer Page. So, Madam Clerk, if you would please take the roll.
Certainly. Councillor Vanderstelt?
Present.
Councillor Utley?
Present.
Councillor Sless?
Present.
Councillor McCreary?
Here.
Councillor Martin?
Here.
Councillor Carpenter?
Present.
Councillor Antosky?
Here.
Councillor Van Tilborg?
Present.
Councillor Wall?
Present.
And Mayor Davis.
I'm present. So with that, I'll review the procedural rules very quickly. All members should remain muted during the meeting, reduce feedback. So please keep your web cameras on during the meeting so you can count towards quorum. Staff will be requested to join the video meeting as and when the need should arise to answer any questions that members of council may have. Please indicate you wish to speak by pushing the participants box, the raised hand button. In the event that connection or service interruption occurs that impacts the quorum, we adjourn for up to 15 minutes. If we can't reestablish quorum, then of course the meeting is adjourned. All members are participating via online video conference. We'll vote using eScribe, and the clerk will announce the voting results. Members of the public who've registered as delegates will take part electronically via webcam or by telephone. Otherwise, all rules for delegations apply. So, members of council, are there any declarations of the pecuniary interest anyone needs to make regarding any item on the agenda for this afternoon? If so, we can raise your hand physically. Not seeing any raised hands. All right, so delegations, we don't have any registered delegates for today's meeting. We did, however, receive correspondence, emails, etc. over the weekend in respect to the Canada Day issue, which have already been distributed by staff. So there are two items for consideration. Council will consider each item separately as there are two different memorandums. And first, I'll say this before we get into it, that this was called on fairly short notice. Of course, as mayor, I have the ability under procedural rules to call for a meeting on fairly short notice to deal with matters of some urgency. And it became very clear last week that in an effort to be sensitive to issues as they were developing both locally, nationally, and provincially, there was a need to re-examine the Canada Day plan that was actually approved by council back, I think, last December, long ago. So there was a need to reconsider elements of that plan, which is why this has come before you. And it's, albeit in a format that normally we wouldn't follow this process, but my view was the events required the meeting to be held, because making changes to what we're doing in respect to Canada Day would, of course, require, at least some of them would require council endorsement or a council resolution. So with that, we do have a Canada Day update from staff coming to us from a memo. And there are two recommendations that are contained in that memo. One is receiving the report. The second is the collection and redirection of donations for the Glenhurst Gardens Character Safari program. I suggest we take this one at a time, and I suggest if I can get a mover and a seconder to get at least A on the floor to receive, we can have our discussion about that, and then we can move forward with any amendments required from there. So I think we've got Councillor, I believe I saw Councillor Utley moving that, and do we have a seconder? Yes, Councillor Martin. So we have that open for discussion to receive it. And then after that, we can consider any amendments to that. But since we've gotten the floor for discussion, floor is now open for discussion. And just a reminder, because it hasn't come to us through committee of the whole, everybody has 2 5-minute speaking opportunities. So, Councillor Antosky.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, or maybe to you, I have a number of questions. We are talking about the to be received, but I don't see anywhere where we're being asked to endorse or vote on the changes or the possibility of, canceling or keeping it as is. So I guess I'd like some clarification on that. Really, the only actionable item other than receiving or ask is that donation piece.
Yeah, I think actually, Mr. Hutchings, I think I saw you pop up there.
If I can through Mr. Mayor, yes, the first matter would be to receive, and then after that, if council so wishes, right now, the direction we received last December through the budget process, proceed on Canada, and that's what we've been doing. Obviously, a modified budget, it's the EOC, the Emergency Operations Center approved, which is more of a virtual budget. But if council wanted to seek another direction, a recommendation be put on the floor and seek another direction at that point in time, Mr. Mayor. But this is to receive. Then once that's voted on, then we can do the other motion with the possible donations. And if council want to go another direction, take it with that motion on the table as well. And we're prepared to move that, to have wording for that recommendation.
Sorry, point of order, Mayor Davis.
Yes.
Sorry. I'm reviewing the document here. You're talking about item A
Yes.
and B, just item A.
Just item A. So here's how I suggest we handle this. So item A, and that's to receive it. And we can have our discussion about that. And then following that, there can be any further resolutions in relation to that, which is really could be B. It could be you want certain items deleted from the events. It could be that you don't want Canada Day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I think I've heard enough. I apologize, Mayor Davis. It appears that at some point we might be discussing a financial donation on behalf of the city and proceeds going to Woodland Cultural Center. And if that's the case, I have to declare a conflict of interest and unfortunately cannot participate in this discussion. So.
Yeah, all the more reason to separate that. But that item is not really on the floor yet. So if it does go on,
that's your ruling. It's not on the floor right now.
It's not on the floor. So if it gets on the floor, then I assume you'll make a declaration at that time.
Okay.
Mayor,
Sorry,
I'm raising a point of order. Are you suggesting that we are going to engage in debate separately on A and B? Is it your intention then that we're going to have 2 speaking opportunities on each of these clauses?
Potentially, that's right.
I suggest that we adhere to our rules, which does not permit that, Mayor. We've drawn criticism in the past for violating our rules and procedures, and I suggest that we stick to tried and true so we don't get ourselves into a jackpot, okay?
I'm going to just play it safe with the clerk's department. I'm going to declare conflict on this item and step away, just perceived or not.
Okay, all right. So what is it you're proposing, Councilor McCurry, that be brought forward as a package A and B as in the
As we do every other item of business, Mayor, up until today.
Okay.
We proceed the way we usually debate these things, and if people want to separate votes or make amendments, they can do that within their 2 speaking opportunities.
All right. That's good advice, and I'll take it, and I'll change my ruling in respect to that. So unless anybody objects, can I have Councillor Utley, I believe it was Councillor Martin. Do you agree then that we'll put on the floor A and B?
I'm good. Yes, I'm good to do that.
Okay. All right. Okay. And Councillor Martin, I think I see a plus there. Okay. All right. Well, let's go into discussion then. I think Councillor Antosky.
Thank you. If I can continue with my
Yes.
clarifications.
I'll now start the timer for you.
Thank you. So I did get some clarification from Mr. Hutchings on that. So what we're reading here is that it's being proposed to run all of the events at Canada Day as is, with the addition of that introductory piece that we've got written here in the moment of silence. And then the change in terms of asking for the donations. I've got that followed. So the proposal right now is as par with those two added pieces. Okay, thank you. I'll listen to other comments. Otherwise, I will likely have an amendment. Thank you.
Councillor Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have the difficulty looking for A and B there. We're on item 5.1, A and B collectively, as Councilor McCurry had ordered. Okay, thank you. Okay, the special city council memo dated be received, so that's be received. B is the direct donations for the Mohawk to Save the Evidence campaign at Glenhurst Garden. So is this asking people to donate cash, or we're having a cash exchange hands during COVID? Is that how this is going to work at Glenhurst? Anybody know?
Do we have a staff member that can answer that?
Mr. Mayor, maybe I'd ask Lori Don Keevan to answer that question. Lori?
Thank you. Through the chair, we have always done a donation collection piece for Brantford's Canada Day celebration. So the thought was that we were going to collect loose coin and cash donations at the character safari. So that is correct.
Okay, because I do notice there are businesses, locations that will not take cash because money can transfer, COVID can be transferred through money. And so that's my concern. During COVID, we're going to accept cash, and there wasn't another option. Personally, I would prefer that we, I know the public will be happy to donate, and the public is very concerned about what's going on, but I think that the city should donate directly in this regard. Last time it was Mayor Friel that brought forward a resolution called the Save the Evidence campaign for donation to the residential school, to save the residential school, and it barely passed council. Some members currently sitting on this council, in fact, voted against that resolution to Save the Evidence campaign. So I think we should be thinking about a way to make this safer and to make a contribution directly from council. Currently, these two items, or B specifically, has there been any discussion with the county of Brant to see what they're doing in this regard? And has there been any discussion with Six Nations Chief Hill on regards to this this direction on this agenda? Thank you.
Yeah, staff.
Well, I can answer. I'll start to answer and see if there's any other staff members. This was discussed. This was raised on Friday morning. Staff were busy preparing the memos Friday afternoon and throughout the weekend. I did have a discussion with a senior administrative officer of the county, sorry, the Six Nations, about a number of things, this being one of them. And we didn't elaborate too much on this, but they were basically pleased that the city was looking to possibly recognize some way the situation, but it was not extent of my discussion. I'm not sure if any of my staff have talked to the county or Six Nations other than what I did.
Okay, has anybody talked to Woodland Cultural Center about these donations?
Lori Don, are you familiar with anybody talking to Woodland?
Through the chair, no, I personally have not reached out.
Marlene, you said you've reached out to some agencies?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'll just ask Aaron. Aaron did several reach out with some of our staff to some of our partners. So if I could just ask Aaron to comment on some of that preliminary dialogue.
Yeah, good afternoon. Aaron Wallace, Director of Community Programs. So I can speak to the outreach that was done Friday. So what we wanted to do with some of the Indigenous community partners that we typically work with was to reach out, advise them that these memos were coming to council on Monday, that within the memos would be a discussion around potentially setting apart Victoria Park and potentially some donations, just to advise them before this was in the press, or they would have seen this come out of the discussion on Monday. So there's been no, to the council's question specifically, not through my department has there been any specific discussions around donation or any kind of formal consultation within that. Just a kind of courtesy outreach to say these things were going to be discussed by council on Monday.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I can indicate I did reach out to Chief Hill, but was unable to reach out. So, all right, Councillor Utley, I think you got your hand raised.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Rotary Club Sunrise had a fundraiser recently, and members were asking the people that drove in for cash donations, and the members bought a bunch of fishnets from extendable fishnets from the dollar store, and that minimized any contact with money and with those that donated. So that I'm just offering that out as a safe tip to consider if we approve this fundraising event. And the only people that really came in that counted the money, they wore gloves and masks while they were performing that task. But I think by including the fundraiser in our Canada Day celebrations, it gives us an opportunity to celebrate our wonderful country, and it also helps us reflect on some of the things that this country has not done very well, and to try and make amends to, or you never be able to make amends completely, but I think it's a way of showing our respect to those that did suffer and still suffer as a result of residential schools. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Yes, Councillor Antosky. So I can go around.
Thank you. I guess some follow-up in terms, and I know that this has been a really short turnaround time for us trying to make decisions, but so we heard that there hasn't been the opportunity to have discussions specifically on what's on the item, but on the agenda today. For clarification, Aaron, you said that we've advised them, so they've seen the documents, they know what we're talking about today, we think. I mean, they've been sent to them. We don't know if they've seen them or looked at them, and they, whoever they are, all the agencies, etc. Like, were these actual documents that these memos sent?
Through the chair, those memos were not sent to our department. They weren't prepared by the time we were reaching out. We reached out early on Friday when the memos were being developed, just to let the partners know that discussions were underway and that they might see something on Monday. So the answer is no, they may not have unless they access them publicly when the clerks published them this morning.
And did those partners include Six Nations, Woodland Cultural, any of those groups?
Through the chair, they did. We put it out through our networks. So primarily the Indigenous Friendship Center, and the membership there is fairly broad. Where possible, we tried to reach out to individual agencies. I can tell you between Friday and now, we haven't heard much back, understandably, given it's the timing of it. But that would have landed in their inbox, but I couldn't speak to whether individuals within those organizations have had a chance to review and consider what's in there yet.
Okay, and would Brisk be one of them?
Through the chair, yeah, Brisk is absolutely one of them. I use them interchangeably with the Indigenous Friendship Center because I know they're the backbone agencies for that, but yes.
All right, so okay, so we don't know how much they know about this yet, nor have we had any feedback to know if we're heading in the right direction. So I'm starting to feel a little bit uncomfortable with this, although all good intent for sure. Would you, I do have an amendment, Mayor. Do you want me to do that now or wait, hold on to that?
We still have some first-time speakers that just popped up.
No problem.
Councillor Sluss.
Mine's an amendment, Mr. Mayor, so I'll wait till everybody's had a chance as well.
Okay. Councillor Vanderstel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When everyone has had a chance to speak, I may have an amendment as well. But a question through you to our staff. Do we currently have a COVID-sensitive cash handling policy that we've been adhering to in other situations similar to the one presenting at Glenhurst?
Through the chair, I can answer that. We actually did reach out to Rotary the Rotary Club to utilize the equipment that they purchased for a former event. And it's the same system that we supported through the Glenhurst Lights. So it is contactless. And it'll be, we'll use PPE when we do the counting, if that's the direction that we take.
But we don't have a policy strictly pertaining to the safe handling of cash during COVID.
Councillor, to you, Mr. Mayor, no, we don't, not specifically during COVID. We've not come up with a policy. We've had times where we haven't handled cash. We've relaxed that now with the new measures that Lori Don's referred to in other areas, like in our waste management site and what have you. So we weren't accepting cash, but now we are, both at City Hall and Waste Management throughout the corporation. But there's a method that people are doing it, but there's no official policy as if that's what you're asking.
Okay, yeah, thanks, CEO Hutchings. There's no official policy on cash handling. Thank you. And additionally, Mr. Mayor, when it comes to any, because of the short order of business that we're experiencing here, in keeping with our previous communications with people at Six Nations, all of these discussions and possible amendments would then be subject to, correct me if I'm wrong, vetting these decisions through First Nations people, Band Council, people of Six Nations, correct? It's not as if we are taking immediate direction and without consultation. Is that correct?
Is that directed to staff, or did you say that to the mayor? Sorry, I just want to clarify.
My apologies, Mr. Hutchings. Sure, directed towards you. It's not something that we are taking definitive action on right now. This is a discussion, correct?
Yes. To your question, though, is, this was asked of us on Friday morning. We prepared the memo. Basically, was asked if we're going to. There's a lot of issues regarding if people are proceeding with Canada. Various municipalities aren't. Our memo's basic suggestion, we will proceed with that, but there'd be donations going from Glenhurst, and then from Glenhurst towards the Save the Evidence campaign. So would there be more consultation with Woodland? Yes, about providing the donations there. The short answer is yes, we would have those consultations with them about providing them the donations.
Wonderful. Okay. Thank you, CEO Hutchings. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Celeste, you raised your hand again, so.
Yeah, well, yeah, I don't want to move my amendment yet, Mr. Mayor, but I was just wondering, I guess, or thinking out loud, the time does not permit proper consultation, and I understand that. We don't have time. Something has to be done. And I think we're all in agreement to that something has to be done. But I would suggest, or at least I would hope, that there's been enough conversation, enough sharing of information, that if there were concerns out on Six Nations, that they would have been shared at this time. Would that be a safe assumption on my part? Like, they're not going to have time to have a council meeting to approve what we're suggesting anyway. So it's kind of one-on-one individual conversations, and I guess noting if any concerns arise out of those conversations. But to have a formal process of approval or recommendation coming from Six Nations, time simply does not permit that. Is that a fair statement?
I think that's obvious. This is a situation that's developed very rapidly and all across the country. And I think Mr. Hutchings is correct. Implicit in B is continuing Canada Day with obvious modifications and amendments. And just it's a question of timing, really.
Right, but I think we've shared enough information that the intent of what's going forward with Six Nations would be aware of it. And I guess my question is, has there been any concern raised from Six Nations, or do they appear to be favorable to our suggestion?
Because of the rapidness of this, being Friday afternoon, again, there was a brief discussion with their senior administrative officer, very, very brief, who was on vacation and, on his way to appointments. There is a meeting set up tomorrow with the mayor and myself and the chief and their senior administrative officer tomorrow to have a discussion about this. But as you heard Mr. Wallace speak about, there was some discussion with some of our local agencies as well. But other than that, Council, there's been no formal receipt of any information from Six Nations regarding this matter, nor any other direction towards Six Nations.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So Councillor Antosky, why don't we go to you? I assume your amendment, Randy.
Thank you. My amendment is, I guess it would replace B and okay, so A is to receive, and I would like to add in a clause that says that the current Canada Day festivities be canceled for 2021 and a donation made to save the evidence.
Yeah, I guess the problem with that is this. I mean, B, implicit within B is that that the events planned are proceeding, and obviously with this modification. So
that's why I was asking that front question.
Your amendment, I think, is completely contrary. I think the way to handle that would be if you want to deal with it that way, that kind of a separate vote on B, and if B is defeated, I guess it'd be on that basis, and then you could replace it with a different amendment to the received requirement. I think that's the way logical would be.
Okay.
Because it's hard to say that's an amendment when it's.
Well, I agree, and that's why I was asking those first questions up front. We didn't really have the opportunity to vote on either having it or not having it. So fair enough. Thank you.
Yeah, but I think implicit in B is that very thing. So if you want to direct your comments that way, I think that'd be.
And then I will ask for separating them at vote time, please.
I think that's the way to deal with it. So any other discussion? We have a separate vote called on B. Councillor Carpenter.
Yes, so where's the recommendation that that Canada Day continue as planned? I don't see that. All I see is dealing with the Rotary business and the Glenhurst Gardens collection. I see that on the agenda. I see us receiving the information, but I don't see any recommendation that this B probably should have said, if it was done properly in my mind, that Canada Day continue with this, and then it directs what's continuing with it. So my word mate would have been in order if we had actually had what I think would have been proper recommendation coming forward in the first place, which we do not have here. Secondly, I'd like to know what we've done in regards to the Truth and Reconciliation report. What has the city got planned, and what has city done to address any of the issues there? And secondly, Save the Evidence campaign. I support us making that donation there. Whether we have to ask our citizens to do it, I think we should do it. But I just find this strange how this is coming forward. I know it was done in a hurry up fashion. I understand that we may have some errors there for that reason, but I just have a problem with how this has been put forward. Thank you. Process is a concern.
Okay. Councillor McCrory.
Well, I agree with Councillor Carpenter that the haste inherent in what's before us today can lead to nothing other than an outcome which is less than desirable. And I agree with Councillor Carpenter that the format in which we received this information today does not permit somebody to cancel Canada Day. Thank God for that. I don't agree that defeating Clause B puts everything back on the table. Mayor, I don't think that's in order to consider that the defeat of that clause puts the issue back on the table to allow members of council to bring a resolution, an amendment rather, to cancel Canada Day celebrations, which are looked forward to by thousands of people in this community every year, for which this community has already paid a substantial sum for said enjoyment, for which the productions have already been made, and for which a lot of people in this community who don't enjoy high incomes look forward to every year as a means of some pretty inexpensive entertainment for them and an ability to celebrate their nation's history and birthday. So
Point of order, please.
Yep. Yes, Councillor Carpenter.
canceling or not canceling Canada Day is not on the table right now, and so I would ask that we speak to what's on the table.
I think it's implicit within B. I mean, the report that we've received clearly contemplates us proceeding, and that's implicit in B. So I don't think that's out of line. Continue.
So if you lads are finished, can I continue?
Yes, you can continue.
Thank you. I would think that that the provisions for Canada Day were implicit in a resolution which came to us quite some time ago, which empowered the Canada Day Staff Committee to go ahead and make plans for Canada Day. And I believe that horse is out of the barn. And Mayor, if somebody wants to contest the holding of Canada Day festivities, I would suggest that what's necessary is to introduce a motion to reconsider the original resolution to empower staff to proceed with Canada Day festivities. I think any other approach is completely out of order, Mayor, and I'd appreciate a ruling on that.
Yeah, I've made my ruling. I think I've made my, I see B, A and B is implicit within that is Canada Day proceeding. And in particular, a separate vote's been called on B. And if B should be defeated, I think it would be in order to bring forward what Councillor Antosky wants to do. That's my ruling. So.
And if that ruling is forthcoming, I'll challenge the chair on that.
That's fine. Okay. Any other? Yes, Councillor Martin.
Thank you. I'll be supporting A and B as they are. It's been suggested that voting down B opens the door to bringing in a resolution to cancel Canada Day. So that is on the floor. And I think it's very important that we continue with this celebration. It's something that this community has done for many years. And we put a lot of time and money into making sure that it's a good event. You can't undo the past by canceling events now. And so I see absolutely no reason to cancel Canada Day. And recently online, there was something from a Mohawk saying there's no need to cancel Canada Day. It doesn't change the past. So it's ridiculous to suggest that canceling Canada Day will help in any way. And I'll be supporting what's on the floor because to do anything
Point of
else, I think
order.
it's-
I think if you can retract the word ridiculous, please.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll retract that.
Thank you. All right.
But this needs to go forward as it is, and I think there's been some changes in the programming to honor the children that lost their lives, and I think that's entirely appropriate, and I fully support that.
Any other speakers? Councillor Van Tilburg.
We received some correspondence. I only see 13, and some of these are from obviously not from within the city, and a handful of them are. Is this all the? Personally, I've only received one actual email, and that actually happens to be in the same correspondence. So I'm wondering how were there other correspondence that we don't have, or is this all that was received to date within the last week?
Yeah. Madam Clerk, can you help us on that?
Certainly. So through the chair, all the correspondence that received through the clerk's inbox was circulated to council members this morning. Then we also facilitated obtaining the information that was sent to the Parks and Rec department for the event, and then we circulated that to members of council. So what is in your hands is all that we have received in the clerk's office.
Okay, so perhaps I've missed something then. Are there comments on the Canada Day sites or our Brantford Talk sites or things like that, other city sites? Websites? Okay.
Can anybody answer that question? Help Councillor.
Well, either you know they're there or you don't know they're there. That's all. And because I've seen this push and what we're really trying to come to grips with, and it's very similar in nature to I think what Six Nations and Indigenous communities had to come to grips with regards to the residential schools and whether they knock them down or not, thus to save the evidence, is we have to come to grips with what do we do on a day where people need to mourn, and Canada Day will be here regardless. You actually don't cancel Canada Day. What we're talking about are, I believe, the celebrations and how we use those celebrations to the best benefit of the community. So I've seen one aspect where we're going to divert the monies. What I want to know is if there's any events, because that's really what you're talking about, is canceling events and still paying for them. But if there's some events that, I guess I'm looking at a way to try to circle around what Councillor Carpenter said. In other words, for the city to reinvest, re-support, regain funding for the Save the Evidence like we did a number of years back. Because what people are looking for, and everyone's looking for a way. How is the city going to mourn this tragedy? And believe me, this tragedy isn't going to go away after this Canada Day. It will be with us next year, and we know this. And so I think it's very important that, well, some people have said to do certain things. It's up to us to come together. What is the best way? And the fact that we're trying to do this in short time, and it's actually not until tomorrow that we can actually engage with some members of Six Nations to get their opinion. We're still trying to make certain decisions without possibly some of the communication that we need in order to know where is everybody, and I mean emotionally, on this subject. And so that's what it's come down to. I'm not so sure that you get the right outcome by ending celebrations, and yet at the same time I know that some people in grieving believe that's what needs to be done. And I'm assuming we do get 2 speaking opportunities on this file. So with knowing that, I would wait to hear what some other members of council have to say.
Yeah, I'll say a few words. And I'd say this, Councillor Van Tilburg, I mean, we do have a part 2 that speaks to doing something further in respect to Canada Day, and that is depending on what the decision is on that, when we're to part 2, that is certainly one of the major issues to be dealt with, a meeting that Mr. Hutchings referred to. But if I can make a few comments, you know, we've joined with Indigenous communities across Canada and across the country, and all those impacted by the residential school system. And we're in mourning the loss of the unmarked grazing Kamloops, and now what's been discovered at the Indian Residential School in Saskatchewan. Very shocking, to say the least. You know, given our proximity to Six Nations, I mean, this is especially sensitive, tragic news that impacts the Indigenous nations in this region. And it's, you know, but before all these upsetting discoveries, I can assure you, and council knows this, we've been working hard to strengthen the city's relationship with the Six Nations of the Grand River. And that resolve obviously is just simply going to continue to increase over the next few weeks and months. And the meeting tomorrow is an example of that. Unfortunately, there just wasn't enough time, given the way events had overtaken us, to be able to do that in a more logical fashion. And you know, this council, we've already indicated on several occasions, we fully support the Mohawk Institute and the Save the Evidence campaign, and we've actively called through resolution asking the federal government to increase funding for First Nations and Inuit cultural education centers program to conduct the investigations to protect and revitalize Indigenous language and culture in this region and across the country. And to provide the necessary support and assistance for the victims of the policy, the Indian residential school policy. You know, regarding events planned for this week, it's my view that we should strive for the right balance between marking our country's accomplishments, while at the same time reflecting on the dark and tragic moments of our nation's history. And events of the past week have had many of us, me included, wondering how we go about doing that with a day, saluting this country, and how you deal with that with the recent revelations that have brought forward some pretty terrible and tragic parts of our history. But, I think reminding ourselves and reflecting on our nation's true history, that's a good thing. There are parts of our history that are tragic failures, and I can think of several right off the top of my head. The internment of Japanese Canadians during World War II, the turning away of Jewish refugees during World War II who were fleeing the Holocaust. And now we have this taking Indigenous children from their culture, from their communities, from their families, to what was really, in many cases, nothing more than a juvenile prison system. But you know what? We got a lot to be proud of in this country. We played a major part in defeating Nazism. We've got one of the most successful records in the world of taking and absorbing refugees and immigrants from across the world. We have an open and stable system of government that's admired in many parts of the world. And we've seen recently in the States how important that is. So, looking at our faults shouldn't cause us to cancel out what's good about our country. And every nation, every organization, every individual has failures and triumphs, shameful moments and admirable ones, and Canada's no different. And I think what is needed is a day where we look at and consider our entire history, the good, the bad, and frankly, the ugly. And from that recollection, that consideration and reflection, arrive at a better and more complete understanding of our country and what we need to do to build a much better country. And so I support then that we continue with a day where we appreciate what's good about our country and what we can build on. But at the same time, during that day and every day and week that follows, consider, commemorate, and reflect on what happened to Indigenous families and children throughout the country and even in our own city. The goal should be, I believe, to redouble our efforts to purge our community and country of hate and discrimination, and to foster a better understanding of the Indigenous nations in our country and how we can strengthen and better create the bond of that relationship for the benefit of all. And I think these efforts start with on July 1st and the days that follow, doing what we can to reflect not just on July 1st, but on a regular basis after that, and through our actions, reflect on what happened to these Indigenous children. And so that becomes a more integral and central part of our history, so we know how best to address that in the future. And so it's about, in my mind, striking the right balance between the best and the worst. So moving forward, we're better. So with that, any other comments? Councillor Antosky, you've had two speaking shots, but actually your first one was just one question. I don't think it was really a speaking opportunity, and I'll give you the opportunity to.
I appreciate your leniency. I was trying to clarify.
Point of order, Mayor. Two speaking opportunities is two speaking opportunities. Whether or not the speaker runs the clock out or not, they count. And I think you're crossing a line again by allowing some folks different latitudes than others. So I would hope that you would stick to our rules and procedures. As in past, we have taken a lot of criticism for straying from what we've been perceived as breaking our own rules, okay?
Yeah, I understand your concerns, Councillor McCurry, and this is a pretty unusual situation, I think, which requires a little bit of bending, and so I'm going to bend a bit.
Mayor, I think the folks that were advocates for Airedale could say the same thing about special circumstances.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to debate that. I've got a decision I have to make today, and I'm making it. Councillor Antosky.
Thank you, Mayor. I would consider my first one a point of clarification, but thank you for that. So I'd like to clarify some things that some folks seem to have thought my intent was behind what I was proposing. I agree we need to strike a balance. I agree that there's nothing we can ever do to undo history, and there's never enough. It'll never be enough what we can do in terms of reconciliation, but we need to start somewhere. I am also a proud Canadian in where we stand on the international stage. I am not proud of our dark history, which we're talking about today. And this is not about canceling our pride in Canada. This is about taking a moment in time and recognizing a very significant start of things that we're about to learn about, and taking an appropriate pause. And it's about, so yes, is this still going to be in front of us next year? I suspect it is, but now we've got a year to speak with the people that this affects the most directly and find out how we walk alongside them. Again, I get concerned with settlers making these decisions with best intent. I also want to comment, I agree, our staff is bar none on this. They are fantastic and they've done an amazing job over the past 2 very uncertain years of Canada Day. So this is not in any way to reflect on the excellent work that they've done. So I want to clarify those things, that none of those things were my intent, and it seemed to be suggested that it might be. This is really a pause in time, and this transcends politics. This is not just about elected officials. This is human nature, and these are our neighbors, and this is all of Canada. So that is why I have put that forward. Thank you, Mayor, for your indulgence.
Yeah, and I'll take my second speaking opportunity to address something that you just talked about, Councillor Toski, and that is, the last year and a half, haven't we prided ourselves at this city, and we've been pretty good at it through the COVID pandemic, and especially coming from staff we've asked them to do it, and they've done it, which is being nimble, which is being innovative, which is being pivoted, which is reacting to circumstances. And we've seen these tight timelines all the way through this pandemic where decisions had to be made in the shortest of timeframes. And day in, day out, week in, week out, our staff have risen to the challenges. Is how what's rolled out over the last 8 or 9 days and even the last 4 days, is it perfect? Is it? Absolutely not. But, I think we've learned to live with through the last year and a half with situations and decisions that aren't necessarily perfect, because we know there's a need to make a decision. Right? And so if you want to go perfect, you don't make a decision. Unfortunately, we've learned that lesson. So anyways, with that, yes, Councillor McCreary, for your second speaking opportunity.
Mayor, thank you very much. So to be clear, it's been suggested that folks are being encouraged to vote against Clause B to get something which I consider to be out of order, which is an opportunity to put something completely contrary back on the floor. But I would suggest that if you're voting against Clause B, you're voting against sending money to the Mohawk Institute Save the Evidence campaign. That's what it says, okay? That's what it says. You don't want to send them money, vote against Clause B. Knock yourselves out, okay? But I'll be supporting it, not only because I want to see us celebrate Canada Day, but because I also want to see us venerate the losses that our friends and neighbors to the south of us have suffered as the result of what went on at that school over the years. And I, for one, am supporting B to make sure they get some money out of us. And Mayor, I think in the following item that we'll be debating, there's an opportunity there as well. Thank you.
All right. I don't see any other hands raised. Madam Clerk, we've got a separate request. So I think if we start with A, I think that makes sense. We start with A, which is receipt, and then we move to B.
Mayor, can I ask a point of clarification, please?
Yeah. Yes, Councilor Carpenter.
In the resolution, the money's not coming from us, it's coming from the public, is it not coming from council?
Yeah, that's correct. That's
okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So Madam Clerk can.
Certainly. So commencing with Clause A first. Councillor Van Tilburg, just awaiting your response.
I do not have a working iPad.
I can mark your vote if you could vocalize it for me.
Clause A, yes.
I'll certainly mark that. Clause A of item 5.1 being Canada Day update has carried on a recorded vote of 7-2. Those voting in favor, Councillors Vanderstel, Utley, Sless, McCreary, Martin, Van Tilburg, Mayor Davis. Those opposed, Councillor Carpenter, Councillor Toski.
So Madam Clerk, proceed to take the separate vote on B.
Councillor Van Tilburg,
No.
Clause B of item 5.1 Canada Day update has carried on a recorded vote of 6-3. Those voting in favor, Councillors Vanderstel, Utley, Sless, McCurry, Martin, Mayor Davis. Those opposed, Councillor Carpenter and Toski, Van Tilburg.
All right, so we'll move to item 5.2, and there's a recommendation from a memo. So following the previous ruling that was in response to a query by Councillor McCreary, it's been presented to us as a package. I think I'm looking for a motion that takes the package and puts it on the floor. And I should note that B it might be slightly different than what you saw in your materials. B, which is the lowering of flags, would only be it's half-mast on the first day of each month and continue on to the balance here. It seemed to suggest in the original version that would be continuing. So I believe that's what's intended. So if I can have, and then we can deal with separate votes, any amendments, etc. So if I can have a mover and a seconder to get this one on the floor. So moved by Councillor Utley, seconded by Councillor Sluss. So again, 2 5-minute speaking opportunities, and the floor is open. Okay, Councillor Utley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to amend item B when questions, everyone's had an opportunity to ask questions and make comments. Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor, I think that B is already in there. Maybe Tanya, if you can just confirm.
Through the mayor, yes. So I did adjust that wording based on Councillor Utley's request for the first day of every month, just to clarify that within the recommendation prior to being moved and put on to the floor.
So there's no need for an amendment.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. I hope if I still have the floor, Mr. Mayor.
Yep, still got it.
I do have a question in C. It mentions the Children's Memorial Garden, and I just wanted to clarify: is this a reference to a new children's memorial, or is this a reference to the Children's Memorial at St. Andrew's Park on Brent Ave?
Through Mayor Davis, Councillor Utley, this is the existing park that you had mentioned a lot of.
Okay. Thank you, Indy. I hope we can get behind this. I think this is a wonderful way of honoring the children that lost their lives, for generations to come and act as a reminder that this should never happen again. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Next in speaking order, I have Councillor Sluss.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I really like this idea in Victoria Park. I think it's very appropriate, and I think the statue in the center is very appropriate as well. This whole process of fencing off the park and making it a place of reflection, I think is an excellent idea. The only question I had, and I can't find it now, but I read somewhere in the report that this will continue until September 11th, when we will get a report back on its future. And I'm just, that's a rather significant date in the world's history. And I'm just wondering why that date was picked, if it has significance to what we're doing here.
So through you, Mayor Davis, the date is significant. I understand that. It was the first week back from Lori as well, just if there's any opportunity there for the students if they were to return to see the areas that we had blocked off for the memorial. But that date, again, when we report back, it'll be before September, most likely. And that can be changed as well. I understand September 30th is also Orange Shirt Day as well, and it could be extended or it can be brought back. So we'll bring that decision back to council.
Okay. So as it stands now, if nothing was changed, it would cease to exist on September 11th. However, there'll be a report back with some recommendations and we can decide the fate and the dates at that time. Am I understanding correctly, Andy?
That's correct. And for some of the items, we did need to get costing. So we did have to pick a date, arbitrary date for purposes of getting those estimates.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Antosky.
Thank you, Mayor. I like what's being done here as well. One of my questions was also about the date. So I suspect if two of us are asking it, a lot of other people will wonder what the significance is, and maybe it might make sense to run that right up to Orange Shirt Day, which might be a nice tie-in. I also love the balance that was found with the flag lowering on the first every month. So that's a great way to address what we talked about in the past thing, remembrance, keeping the thought process alive and keeping that conversation going. I'm having and maybe it's just me, but I can't picture what this installation actually is. If I'm arriving here and I come to a fence, can I have an explanation of what I know there's orange lights and there's fencing and it's a place for reflection, but I'm not clear on what we're talking about here. Is that simply what it is? Is just creating a space?
So through the chair, that's correct, and the fencing really is we do have the COVID restrictions outdoor as well, so we can control that in terms of entrance in and out. In regards to the space in general, I can call on Lori Dawn. Maybe she can just provide some of the atmosphere, the animation that may be happening in the park.
Thanks, Andy. Through the chair, the thought was to create a very wonderful tribute in terms of something visual that could be seen if you were driving by in your vehicle at night. It would lend the curiosity to stop, and once you stop, you would enter into the park and understand what it symbolizes. So for those of you who had visited the vigil that we've done the last couple of years for Canada Day, or sorry, Remembrance Day, we do a lighting display that is very animated with movement and whatnot. And it's a very solemn atmosphere that just provides the opportunity for quiet reflection, but is a visual tribute.
Excellent. That gives me a better idea. And I know the Remembrance Day was phenomenal and really highly regarded and recognized. Thank you for the explanation. I appreciate it. This is great.
Councillor McCurry.
Mayor, thank you. When I read the report, it says that staff estimates a cost of $100,000 for the installation of the memorial. Can you specify exactly what is meant by the memorial?
So through you, Mayor Davis, what's meant by that is all the works required to have the memorial in place, not the memorial itself.
What exactly is the memorial?
So what we're looking at right now is a space where folks can either come and lay flowers or reflect in any way that they choose. And that would include security as well, like I mentioned, for COVID. So there's costs associated with actually running it and having it in place.
So is there a physical memorial?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so there's not a physical memorial. The park itself is going to be used.
Okay, so then I'm failing to understand what we're spending $100,000 on to install. There's not a physical memorial.
So through you, Mayor Davis, maybe install is not the word of choice, but in order to operate the memorial and use Vic Park, the costs are $100,000 as detailed in Table 1.
So the $100,000.
Just like Councilor McCurry, I think Mr. Hutchings popped up.
I have the floor, Mayor. I'll
Yeah,
control
well,
the floor.
you hang on. No, I'm the chair and I control this meeting. And the staff are allowed to answer your question.
I did not ask a question. I'm speaking, Mayor.
Yep.
Staff can chime in when I'm finished, okay?
No,
So we're spending.
Councilor McCurry, you asked a question.
I got an answer. Thank you. And I'm satisfied.
Yeah,
with
well,
that
you know,
answer.
I
So
decided,
we're spending 70.
I decided as chair if we got an answer. So I saw Mr. Hutchings come up, and often we do it this way that staff want to add something. So please, let's be respectful. If we could hear from you.
Mayor, if you don't mind, so we're spending $75,000 on security. Is that to keep people out?
It would be, Counselor, it would be to keep not people out, but keep within COVID restrictions, as well as ensure the safety and respect the people that came there to provide memorial and grieve to make sure that they are properly allowed that space to do that.
Could you explain properly allowed to me?
Just to make sure, Counselor, that they have their space and they're not interrupted by anybody in the downtown core at the park. So the fence would, the gate, the park would be fenced off, be an entrance for them to come in. We could then guide and see how many people would be in the park, again, for COVID restrictions, and allow them to pay their respects in a peaceful manner.
So we're denying the people of this community an opportunity to enjoy that park, other than those folks who want to come in to pay their respects. We're also fencing it off. Is there going to be like one entrance to get in?
There would be, as planned right now, again, this was planned on Friday, there'd be an entrance and an exit, Councilor McCrory.
And is anybody other than me aware that this is part of the Heritage District? And that if you're going to make changes like this, it should have been to the Heritage Committee?
Council, if I can, Councilor McCrory, that was not raised on Friday. This is new information for us.
It shouldn't be new information, but it's part of our Heritage District. Mayor, perhaps I'm alone in this, but I'm failing to gush all over this as some other members are. I think if we want to honor the children that have been taken from the community, there's a far better way to do this than to turn Victoria Park into a gulag downtown. I'm sorry, I just can't abide by this. We're spending $80,000 to keep people out, and we're spending what, $7,000 to invite people in, and there just seems to be something diametrically wrong with that, in my opinion. I don't think this. How was it put? We're doing this to honor the children who lost their lives in the residential school system. I think we'd be far better off honoring their memory by making a $100,000 donation to the Save the Evidence campaign. I think this is just wrong-headed. It's being rushed, and I just can't support it the way it stands.
Point of order. I believe the words wrong-headed have been taken away in the past, and I think
yes, they have, Councilor McCrory. The Councilor Bounchin was quite correct. If you please retract wrong-headed, we think we've established precedent for that.
I don't believe I will, Mayor. I'll stand by what I say.
Yeah. Okay. I'd say this about this. This is an example again of, moving for and adapting and making decisions in respect to developing circumstances. And this is going to be, it'll be a work in process. And I view it as to be an area that, as staff envision it, an area to commemorate and reflect. And when you're commemorating, reflecting, I mean, that does require some peacefulness, some ambiance that allows you to do that. And it's a very, sometimes it can be a very individual process, but it's usually very respectful. If it's done right, a place to do it can often be a catalyst to doing it. And the other thing I like about this resolution, but clear it's going to be a work in process and it'll have to be developed. I'm sure it will be in further consultation. The meeting tomorrow will be an example of that. So, but I agree with Councillor Antosky that you can do things on Canada Day and then you don't do anything more, and it becomes, soon forgotten. And so, what's the essence of this particular resolution is making sure that it's happening regularly, periodically, over the course of time, so that it does really become part of our history, part of our thinking, part of our reflection. And you can't do it in one-off days. You've got to have a process that happens periodically and regularly. And I see this as likely leading in future summers and to something, who knows what, but I suspect it'll be similar in nature. So for that reason, I see this as the beginning. I don't see it as the end commemorating and reflecting and considering. It may not be perfect, it may not work perfectly, but again, we're making decisions in a fairly short time frame with the recent revelations, trying to honor that news, those revelations, and I'm sure it's going to evolve over time. But I believe this to be a good start, and for this summer, and we'll see what comes in next year and through the winter. And the flag lowering being part of that, a regular, to make it symbolic and really meaningful, it happens, it has to happen periodically, so people will see it and go, yeah, that's okay, I know why that's down, and that'll cause people to pause and reflect. And pause and reflecting usually leads to hopefully more positive decision making, more positive decisions to actually do something about it. So with that, I'll go to Councillor Van Tilburg.
I think there's something that right in the direction, but I've got a number of concerns that I agree with from a previous speaker. So I feel that this might trying to accomplish it in haste. And I'm thinking that we either have a committee or a deferral and have this come back to us. Just so that gives us enough time. Like I said, I think we're on the right path. I think there's more questions that would need to be asked and need to be fleshed out. And I personally would just be looking for either more time. So I allow other people to have a speak, but I'm either looking that we create a committee to just make sure this is the proper path. We've had no consultation on it, things like that. So whether we do that through a committee or just through a deferral, I think we have to do something like this, and it can even be there. But right at this moment, I'm hesitant to say that I can confidently and comfortably go ahead with the plan as it's been laid out. I do have some concerns.
Okay. Councillor Wall.
Thanks, Mayor Davis. I don't know what's going to happen, but I definitely want C and D separated if we do vote on this.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm thinking about how I'm going to word this. $100,000 is an exceptional amount of money. And I have no comment whatsoever on how that money should be spent, beyond that it should not be spent on fencing up and securing Victoria Park. I stand by everything about a memorial, about paying respects, about showing solidarity. It's $100,000. $100,000.
Is that it? Councillor Wall? Yeah. Anybody else for first time go around? Yeah, Councillor Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's important, and I'm thankful that we're having this discussion. I think it's first and foremost that we as council are sitting around having this discussion about what's important with what happened at the residential schools. And we've got one of the, Mohawkus is one of the oldest and longest residential school in the country, 142 years that went by, where the country was taking children from their families. And some of them never to return. Many, as we found out, abuses that happened, and it's intergenerational. The pain is intergenerational, the damage is intergenerational. And we've taken a nation and tried to have a cultural genocide in this country to remove the culture from the First Nations populations in our country. And we've still yet to put it back. We still yet to even recognize it in the sense of not just the children that have lost their life, that is certainly important, but we haven't recognized it as a council, as a province, and as a country yet to what we're what are we doing as a city to deal with the Truth and Reconciliation Report? What part of it are we dealing with? And I want to start off by saying this. Excuse me. We'd like to acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples. Brantford is situated in the Haldimand Tract, land promised to Six Nations, which includes 6 miles on each side of the Grand River. Every organization in town, every university, every college starts off their meetings with that saying, except for us, except for any part that recognizes the City Hall. It doesn't start off, if it's at the Sanderson Center, it doesn't start off wherever the meetings are, it doesn't start off. So it shows the lack of recognition to start off with. So I just want to say we need to do more. We need to reach out. We need to put more pressure on the federal and provincial governments to say, look, get rid of the bloody Indian Act and recognize a nation as a nation that it is, and deal with nations within nations. And if we were to deal with a nation within a nation as a country, you never have a province ever threaten separation again, because they all have operate throughout every province in the country. It would sew the country together. It would be very profitable for all of us. But we're not doing that. In fact, what happened in those residential schools needs to be in their education system. We need to be talking about it on a regular basis. We having the largest reserve and native population, First Indigenous population next to us, we have to play a bigger role in doing that as a city, and we should be, because we should be showing leadership there. And I'm ashamed as a councillor for saying that we haven't done our part as much as we should. So I'm very happy that we're doing something here, Mr. Mayor and staff. I think that's fantastic. You did it in short order. I appreciate that. We're doing something here to recognize the pain and suffering, that intergenerational suffering that's happening as a result of the residential school. So I'm pleased to support this. I too was shocked when I first saw $100,000. Not the cost. The cost was not a concern for me, but $80,000 of that is simply fencing and security guards. Now, my first question that came to me from a constituent was, do we have a security company that we're related to or something? Why are we spending all our money on security guards? But that was explaining that we needed to have this dealt with. So to staff, what are we doing about the march that's happening on Canada Day from the Civic Center to the Woodland Cultural Center, wearing your orange shirt to recognize those children? That's happening on Canada Day. Are we part of that process at all? Can I ask that question first?
Ken, through you, Mr. Mayor, part of the process is being run by a separate group. I know the Brantford Police Services, my discussion with the chief, are somewhat assisting in that and guiding it, and so is our traffic department as well, and making sure that's there. But it's being run by a citizen. We're not asking for permits because it's not a activity that's permittable, if that's the proper term. That's our extent of our involvement in that walk from the Civic Center to the Mohawk Institute.
Okay, and we're not announcing it on our website or any of those sorts of things. Is there an opportunity? Could you tell me again why do we not do the land acknowledgement as part of our city council meetings or our regular public meetings? Is there a reason for that? Maybe there is. I'm not aware of it.
I think there's been briefing notes from our legal department on that in the past, Councillor, and I can't, not at liberty to talk about it in open session.
Okay, all right. And Mr. Mayor, if I have a second speaking up, I know I do later on, but before that ends, I have an amendment as well. Thank you.
All right, I have Councillor Utley, then Vanderstel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to recognize staff for putting this report together at very short notice. But one of the problems when we do things to a short timeline is it's quite easy to make mistakes, and it comes back to bite you in the future. So I'm not finger pointing or blaming staff for anything here. I think certainly their efforts have been to do something as quickly and effectively as possible. And thankfully, we've had an opportunity as council to debate what's before us and make some very good, valid points. So right now, I'm very much in support of A and B, but I do feel we especially need more time to debate C. And it's been suggested we have a a small committee or task force to discuss this in further detail. And I think that would be a good thing to do rather than a bad thing. Maybe some good points about a lot of money being spent on security, and is that the right place to invest taxpayers' money? So it's all there for the right reasons. I just think it's been a very productive and objective debate on maybe taking a little bit more time for C&D. So I'll end it there, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much for the time.
Councillor Vanderstel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree. This is a good discussion to have, and I look forward to how the details work themselves out with how we show respect. That's essentially what we're talking about, a beginning of a dialogue on a public forum that suggests how we come up alongside and how we support and how we take care of such a big part of our family. I look forward to that ongoing discussion and how we can how we can continue to educate and work with. It's something that I think should be more a part of our future. But well, this is very personal for so many people and for so many reasons. And I'll tell you straight up, members of council, as a grandfather of a Mohawk man, as a father-in-law of a Mohawk man, and as a member of council, the only member of council that's had the opportunity to listen to the survivor stories after working alongside and being invited into the homes of people from Six Nations and the Credit over 6 years. I no longer at this point really want to say anything other than this to the survivors and to those who are grieving right now. Please don't take this discussion in any way, shape, or form to state that we don't care, we don't understand, and we don't grieve with you and mourn with you. It is so difficult for you to pluck up the courage to continue on your fight and put up with what you've had to put up with from a number of different quarters of our boat, of our society. It's important that you realize that we are trying to educate ourselves. And I feel like a fool asking for patience, but there are so many people who do not understand the gravity of what we're looking at right now. And I apologize for what this looks like to you. However, going forward, what I will endeavor to do, as I have done for the most of my adult life, is to educate and to help people understand how we can better live together, how we can better support one another in these in this journey. And if it's in a language that maybe makes more sense, to polish the silver change is something that I've endeavored to do in every discussion and every decision I have made in private and in public. And I thank you for your patience while I too continue to learn. And in terms of the two-row, we don't want to walk in front of you. We don't want to make decisions for you. What we want to do is to work with you and make better decisions, better legislative decisions with a governing body that assist and come alongside and support. So I thank you for that opportunity, Mr. Mayor. Please come back to me at some point for a potential amendment that will speak further to what I tried to speak on already. And I thank you for your indulgence.
Yeah, I think everybody's had one speaking opportunity and there are various amendments. So just let me check to see if, yeah.
Mayor, if I may interject with a point of order.
Yes.
I'd like to, before we go to any more speakers, I'd like to move that we go in camera. I believe there's more to this than we can discuss in public, and I'd be seeking a seconder to do so. I'm not comfortable asking the questions that I want to ask in public.
Yeah, the difficulty doing that, we don't know what it is you want to discuss in camera, and what the reason is for it. So can you be more specific?
I'll tell you, Mayor, what I want to discuss in camera is item 5.2. And it's not unusual for us to be able to do so. Clearly, if I'm not comfortable asking the question, I'm certainly not going to tell you what the question is.
So what you want is a motion to go in camera to receive legal advice regarding 5.2. So you can ask some questions.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So you're putting that on the floor. Is there a seconder for that? Second by Councillor Martin. Any discussion? Okay. Sorry, Councillor Sless, are you in camera?
No, I'm in the speaking queue, Mr. Mayor.
That's what I thought. Okay. Councillor Carpenter in camera?
Yes. So when we go in camera, we're only going to ask questions that require legal advice and only questions of a lawyer and not comments.
Yeah, that's the general rule of thumb. So and any matters that the discussion that properly follows from the legal advice being given to fully flesh that out. So we have that on the floor. Any further discussion?
Mayor, if I may jump in, my questions are going to be about security to the property of the corporation.
Okay. All right. Madam Clerk, we've got that motion. Take the vote on it.
Certainly, just to clarify, so is it legal advice or is it security to the property, or both is what we're including, just so that I have that captured correctly?
I would be both.
Thank you for clarifying. So the motion to move in camera for the two items, or for the two reasons. So I'm ready when you are, Mayor Davis.
Yep. All right. So let's take the vote on it.
Tanya, I don't have the option to vote in the affirmative.
I'll mark that for you, Councillor Wall. My apologies. Councillor Van Tilborg.
Affirmative.
Thank you. The motion to move in camera has carried on a recorded vote of 9-1. Those voting in favor are Councillors Vanderstel, Utley, Slass, McCurry, Martin, Antosky, Van Tilborg, Wall, Mayor Davis. Those opposed, Councillor Carpenter.
All right, Tanya, will you be sending us a secure link?
Certainly. So what we'll do now is we'll prepare in the background. It may take us, if you're agreeable, Mayor Davis, maybe a 5-minute recess for us to prepare for that process, and it will be emailed direct to the council members. This will still run in the open session, so the members of the public that are tuning in will display a notice that council has moved in camera for a discussion. So this portion will still run. You'll be given a telephone call in for members of council.
Yeah, so should we as members of council leave this on, or should we leave the meeting and then come back into it?
Through the mayor, that's a very good question. Often we've experienced some tech issues when you leave this and try to come back when it is currently running and also being broadcasted. So my suggestion would be to leave this running, certainly turn your cameras off, attend to a different room, and then you'll call in.
Woof, woof. Woof, woof.
He came in to mooch cookies.
Can anybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry, I can't get my camera on. So before we get started, I'm hoping to get the chair to approve that I can still be a participant here.
Tanya, are we ready? Staff, ready?
Tanya will just be joining back in. She just had to leave the meeting and then come back.
Mayor Davis, looks like all of our council members have transitioned into the open session, and I too have transitioned back. So we're ready to go.
Okay, so ready to go. So just to recap for members of the public that are viewing. So we did take a break at the request of Councilor McCurry so that questions could be dealt with in camera in accordance with the Municipal Act, and they related to security of property and legal advice. That's been done. So we're now back, and we're dealing with 5.2, just as where matters stand. I think almost everybody's had one speaking opportunity. And we have 4 items on the resolution, and there's been a request that C and D be separated. And I believe Councillor Van Tilburg, now that we've gotten the legal advice, and I think you indicated previously that you were interested in a motion defer or refer. I think that might be, I don't know if you're looking at the whole motion or resolution or what you had in mind. So
What I had in mind was to refer this to staff and come back to us in 1 month.
Okay. And is it the motion to defer or refer, and is it A, B, C, D, or just C and D?
Just C and D.
Okay. And is it defer or refer?
Well, the thing that I had was probably going to, I see that there were some amendments people wanted to engage in, and I thought referral might be better if we might come back with something a little more tangible than just having the exact same thing come back to us. I thought that we might be able to have a discussion that way in the time with staff so that it would be referred. We can all contact and make things, and then something maybe the same, maybe different will come back. So that's why I'm suggesting referral.
Yeah, I think that's in order. So do you have a seconder to refer C and D for, because you're saying into the next cycle, which will essentially be August. Councillor McCurry, I think, is indicating his desire to second that. So it is a motion to refer, so there can be a debate or discussion beyond simple date and time. So in that regard. but it still has to be the motion of referring. Councillor Sluss.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I won't be supporting the referral. When things tend to get held up, they get held up. And I think this is important that we do what we're doing and we do it now. Staff are going to be coming back constantly to council. The consultation that I think is being talked about, I agree is needed, but I think that will happen as this evolves. I don't think you have to sit here till August to make a decision. I don't buy that argument. I think this can be formed as it moves forward, but I think it's very important that it move forward. And I say that for a number of reasons, Mr. Mayor. As we all know, we're neighbors to the largest reservation in Canada. And I would tend to think that there are a lot of eyes on our city from across the nation to see how we handle what's happening, because our turn is going to come when they start discovering things in our city. So to try and kick this down the road, okay, it's only a month, but a month is a long time at the speed things are moving across the nation. And I don't think we have that kind of time to look at. And when I look at the budget that's set up, and I know that concerns a lot of people, $100,000 concerns me as well. But I don't know if anybody here has been to the Vietnam Memorial Wall in Washington, D.C. But I'll tell you, that memorial, which is, I think, going to be very similar to what you're seeing in our city, people bring personal mementos and they lay them there and they're sacred to those people. That's the kind of vandalism I don't want have happening in our community. There's going to be they might not look valuable to the naked eye, but to the person who put it there, it means everything. And it's a commemorative thing. It's something that connects them to the person that they lost or that they're connected to in the residential school system. So I think it's highly incumbent upon our community to protect that in the best way we know how. And from my perspective, the best way I know how is to put a fence around it and put 24-hour security on it to make sure nothing inadvertently or by choice happens to those very, very valuable mementos that people have been probably carrying for years in memory of somebody that is very near and dear to them. So while it is a lot of money, the emotional impact of having something like that destroyed, there is no amount of money that you could discuss that would compensate for something happening to those types of sacred mementos to those people. So I guess on many levels, I can't support the referral. I think this is something that has to move forward and move forward now, not at some point in the future. And again, in August, there's no guarantee it's going to move forward in August. There might be something else that somebody wants to discuss and we kick it further down the road. To me, that's not acceptable. I think we have to act now and let this evolve and be participating in it so that it evolves in the way that we want to have it evolve. I think that's important, Mr. Mayor. So to wait another 4 or 5 weeks, I don't think is acceptable. It's not acceptable to me anyway. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. Councillor Vanderstelt to the deferral.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, the referral?
The referral. Sorry.
The referral, yes. No, I apologize. I can't support the referral either. And I will bring forward another amendment based on another conversation we've recently had that may serve to address the sensitivity of the nature of what we're dealing with. And I ask you to come back to me, and I ask council to allow that process to happen. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Next to the referral, Councilor McCurry.
Well, thank you very much, Mayor. I have no problem whatsoever in honoring the memories of folks who died at residential schools here and elsewhere. I think it's a most appropriate thing for the municipality to do. I'm going to support the referral, and should that fail, I'll be looking forward to Councillor Vanderstelt's amendment that will come forward. And I'll tell you why I'm going to support the referral. I believe there probably are better options for us to pursue, which might speak better to our investment of funds to create something of a longer lasting memorial and something of a legacy. I look, Mayor, at spending $75,000 on security guards and $5,000 on fencing to keep people out of a public park. And I really do think that there is there's an issue here that I can't get beyond. I think given some time, like Councillor Vanderstelt indicated, we can look at other options for proper recognition. And Mayor, I think as a fallback and perhaps another opportunity, we could simply consider investing that kind of money as a donation to the Save the Evidence campaign. And that could very well be another option that staff would come back to us with. We've rushed this, and we all know what happens when we rush things or we start doing things after 10 p.m. We don't necessarily get the best outcome. And I do agree with Councillor Sless. I've been to the Vietnam Memorial. I've also been to the Flight 93 Memorial, which was even more poignant because it was created on the fly. But it became a transitory thing, and it was gone in a period of time when they did the permanent memorial, and all those artifacts went into the permanent memorial. So I understand what the councillor is talking about, having experienced those myself. But I think here some time will do us good. It will give us some options to peruse. I think, as I said, Mayor, I think something that comes to us after 3 days consideration perhaps isn't our best course of action. And in the fullness of time, if we can have a couple of weeks to look at options, I'm sure we can probably do better than what's before us today.
Sorry. Next up is Councillor Van Tilburg.
Yeah, just to be clear, for me, it's not about the money. And I understand why councillors would want to see something done with urgency. Fully understand that. What I was looking for was time that we could have a valued conversation with our Indigenous and Six Nations communities on if this is the best way. That's a conversation we haven't had. So it's more in my mind, settlers deciding this is the spot and this is where we're going to do it. And the concept of how it's going to be done. Again, those things can change in the future. I get that, but I just thought that it's important that we do things as best as we can. And if some of those disagree with the desire to take a little more time at this, I understand that. I'm not taking it personally. I'm just saying that I would like to have had that time in order to make sure that we've covered our bases, that we are doing what is valued to the community most affected, and that we are doing it in the right way. And I don't know if what's in this resolution actually does that or not. It is done quick. It is something that we can do, and it could get done. It's just that it was just a way for it to come back to be better. No intent under the terms of kicking things down the road and kicking it down the road further. It was about trying to do it right. So if this does fail, because I don't know right now, I'm hoping that there is a councillor out there with an amendment to what's before us in order to meet some of the needs that I'm trying to address here in how we engage with those that have been most affected by the institutions that the Canadian government created.
Next to the referral, Councillor Herbert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I couldn't agree more with my learned colleague, Councillor Sless, his sage advice. The time is now, and this is for our Brantford citizens who want to pay respects. And I heard Mayor Council talk about respect, and members of council, the public wants to find a way to show how much they care about what happened to the children at residential schools across this country. They want to find a way individually as members of the public of the city of Brantford. They want to know how can they pay respects. And this is what this is about. And is it perfect? Of course not. When I first saw it, I thought the same thing. It's a lot of money for fencing and security. But as Councillor Sless quite eloquently said, it's important that when people pay respects, that the respects be recognized. We know what happened to the flag that was painted on Colbert Street within short order. We need to make sure that when people are eligible to pay their respects, there's a place for them to do that, and that the community can see that collectively collectively, the people in Brant County care, and they care an awful lot. And we've heard from hundreds of people. I have heard from hundreds of people that they would like to do something to show their respect. Donations, Glenhurst is one way, but this is another way for people to actually bring something like the teddy bears that are behind me at Woodland Cultural Center, to do something in Brantford, in a location where they can get together collectively and show their respects. This does just that. That's why I cannot support a referral. We kick the can down the road, even if it's 3 weeks or 4 weeks. The public is crying and grieving now. And now is a time for action, not tomorrow or next week or some other time. And Mr. Mayor, when we get time, I'd like to add an amendment to item E to add a contribution to the Woodland Cultural Center of 100,000 from contingency fund when the opportunity comes forward. But I will not support this referral at this point.
Council Carpenter, Council Martin, to the referral.
Thank you. Councilor Carpenter made a good point in that there's a memorial already in place. There's a picture of it behind him at the Woodland Cultural Center. So I think a referral is appropriate, because what we might end up doing is doing something to help put up a memorial at the Woodland Cultural Center, a place that's more appropriate for this kind of thing.
Sorry, point of order. Sorry to interrupt, Councillor Martin. This conversation has gone to a point where I feel it would be more appropriate for me to declare a conflict at this point, considering my previous conflict. Should I identify that, Tanya? My fiance is a full-time employee working directly on the Saved Evidence campaign at Woodland Cultural Center, and I feel that this conversation has gone too far, and at this point I will remove myself from it.
That's appropriate, Councillor Wall, as a debate develops, if you feel puts you in that position to do that. So carry on. So Tanya, I take it you recorded that?
Through you, Mayor Davies. Yes, I did. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So Councillor Martin, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'll be supporting the referral because, as has been said, this has been rushed, and it doesn't deny people the chance to offer their condolences and offer items for memorial service, because, as Councilor Carpenter said, there already is one at the Woodland Cultural Center, complete with a picture behind him. So I fully support the resolution to refer this. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Councilor Kerr, you raised your hand. Did you spoken once? Did you want to speak again to the referral?
Mayor, it's an item that's not been before us before, so straight to council is 2 speaking opportunities.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. The amendment, of course, is a whole new line of debate. Yes, I think Councillor Martin raises an absolutely excellent point of view here. And I think it brings to a new level what Councillor Sless has talked about with respect to the kind of memorializing that we may see at a place of our choosing. And gosh, I hate to always raise the elephant in the room, but we do have some pretty significant issues in Brantford's downtown area. And we heard Laurie Dawn talk earlier about encouraging folks to come out after dark to Victoria Park to have their peace with the folks who died at residential schools. And I've got to say, when I hear from constituents, I don't hear a lot of encouragement for going downtown after dark in the vicinity of our downtown core. So I think of what Councillor Sless says. I think of what Councillor Van Tilburg has said, and given the sanctity and the need for that quiet reflection, Councillor Martin's suggestion makes more and more sense, that perhaps the place to do this would be at Woodland Cultural Center, where folks can do their grieving and do their commiserating and honor the folks that died there on that site. And those memorials then can be kept in perpetuity by the folks that run the institution there. And I was glad to hear Councillor Carpenter speaking the same line that I was about, making a donation direct to the Save the Evidence campaign, which is where this $100,000 in play could go. And I suspect Councillor Carpenter might be thinking about sweetening the pot with another $100,000. But these are the types of discussions that we can have if we take a little bit more time to think of how we can do this, not quickly, but properly. Mayor, thank you for that.
Yeah, I haven't spoken, and I admit I struggle with this because I like to see resolutions we pass be as perfect as possible. And frankly, Councillor Carpenter and Councillor Celeste convinced me with their very eloquent arguments that, you know, there are some issues, some actions that require immediate action. I don't think there's any doubt, given what's transpired over the last 2 to 3 weeks, this is it. This is one of them. And there's ample precedent, as I said previously, through the pandemic, where we've made decisions that are less than perfect, but we did them and made them because we had to. And I see this in the same sort of line, so I'll be voting against the referral. And I believe we've got Councillor Utley. You haven't spoken to the referral, so you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think there's been some really good comments and debate on this topic and what action to take. And, you know, there's great arguments to do something now, and just as equally good comments on taking our time and doing something a little, you know, a little more refined possibly. I think there's room for both. I think we should do something now, and that doesn't prevent us from doing something at a later date with input to see where the community can best memorialize the children at the residential schools. So at first, I certainly was in favor of referring this and spending a little bit more time to, but Councillor Celeste and Councillor Carpenter both made very, very passionate arguments to do something now, and I'm torn between both, but I think we can have both. So I'm not going to be supporting the referral, but I will be in support of doing something additional to what we're doing now if it gets passed. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Utley. Other second round speakers, Councillor Carpenter, then Councillor Bannister to the referral.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for your comments. I got a knot in my stomach and a tear in my eye when I heard members of council use the memorial behind me as an option. That clearly shows that this council needs more education. That memorial is put there by those that walked the path. That is a memorial for those that suffered at residential schools. It's not our memorial to decide what we will do with it. We're making a memorial at Victoria. We're making a memorial for our citizens to be able to share their grief, not to put something on top of those that have suffered and the atrocities at residential schools. So please don't use the memorial behind me as an excuse for a referral. Thank you.
Councillor Vanderstel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I couldn't agree more with the previous speaker. It appears as though we would be taking the power away from the people who suffered by doing so. It's not our land. It's sacred land. It's hallowed land. It's mournful land. People are grieving on that land, and they don't even know how bad their grieving process is going to be. It's been going on for 100 years. We have no right to set foot there unless we're invited. From my perspective, a way to show respect is to provide an opportunity for settlers to do the very same thing, and then ask whether or not there may be a future kind of a confluence of the two. But we were not invited. When you get an invite, you'll know it. From my perspective, one of the healthiest things we can do in this situation is acknowledge the pain, provide a safe space for those who know that they should not go down to the mush hole for whatever reason. There's so many. Provide a space as leaders that we have plenty of, thank goodness. A safe space where not only when you visit, you can visit in peace, as was intended, but you can be rest assured when you walk away that it will remain in peace. And we stand a post. We post a guard. And we make sure we look after the thoughts, the hopes, the dreams, the feelings, and the hurt that has happened in this community in the past and still happens today, by that, as a matter of fact. So again, sorry for putting such a fine point on it, but bottom line is I cannot support, and I hope you can support what I may bring forward immediately following. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So I don't see any other raised hands. So Tanya, would you please take the vote on the motion to refer C and D into the August cycle?
Councillor Van Tilborg,
Yeah.
I'll record that for you as a yes. The motion to refer clauses C and D has failed on a recorded vote of 3 to 6. Those voting in favor, Councillors Martin, Antosky, Van Tilborg. Those opposed, Councillors Vanderstel, Utley, Sless, McCurry, Carpenter, Mayor Davis.
Okay. So just to repeat then, we have 5.2 still on the floor, a request for a separate votes on C and D, and that's fine. Everyone has spoken at least once, I guess inferentially more than once probably, but there were some amendments that some members, and I'm trying to remember, I think Councillor Carpenter, you may have been the first person to say you had an amendment in mind, so.
Yes, but I'm going to yield the floor to Councillor Vanderstel. I think he has an amendment similar to what I was thinking about, and I'm willing to yield the floor to him and come up after. Thank you, if you don't mind.
Councillor Vanderstel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Inclusive and friendly amendments are always welcome in that situation where it supports our support for our people. I appreciate anything that comes forward. Tanya, I know you're working almost double time in the background there, but might you be able to put on the screen the proposed amendment that we worked on together?
Through the mayor, certainly. Just for clarification, would that be the amendment to similar clause C or the fresh new amendment that you were working on earlier today?
The fresh new one in relation to our in-camera discussion. Thank you.
Certainly.
Mr. Mayor, there's no intended ad hocery here.
Is that what you had in mind? Yeah, I heard you talking about.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
I trust that members have had a chance to read that, and I look forward.
So do you have a second? Do you have a seconder on that?
Seeking a seconder.
Councilor McCurry is indicating second.
I look forward to an additional healthy discussion about this. I'll fully admit that this is an extremely emotional meeting for me, and I will restrict my comments to what I hope will be factual. I want to ensure that we encapsulate what we have spoken about in camera without alluding to what we talked about in camera. Obviously, we can't do that for legal reasons. From my perspective, this may provide a balance of use at Victoria Park for those who we are intending to create a space for, and those who intend to use the space for other reasons. And my suggestion is that when we post guard, we are showing respect. When we protect a memorial, we are showing respect. When we show through the use of our funds that we support both of those efforts, we are showing respect. It's just one more opportunity. And again, I hope we will see more of those opportunities going forward to help educate the public. I think it's a noble attempt. It may be a smaller attempt than our fulsome discussion will dictate later on, but I think it's a clear, bold statement that says, yes, we are with you. We want to create a space where this can happen as well. It does so not standing in front of the people of First Nations. It does so by standing beside them and supporting them. So from my perspective, if this is amenable to members of council, rather than deferring this or referring this, rather than putting it off, I ask for your support for a bold statement that says, here is one way that we want to show our respect. And we're going to continue to search to find ways of showing our respect and continue to work alongside you, not in front of you, not telling you what to do. This is what we're going to do for you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Sluss.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It kind of flashed up on the screen a little too fast for me. I maybe not as fast at reading as others, but it seemed to me if I got the gist, it was to we're going to reduce the amount of space we use within Victoria Park for this memorial. Is that really the gist of I see a head going up and down. Yes, so okay, I'll accept that as, and I understand the reasoning behind putting that forward. The concern I have with it is in the portion that isn't cordoned off. I'm not sure how respectful that portion of the park will be towards what's going on inside the sanctuary, as I would call it, within the fencing. So, well, I understand the intent, and I know that's honorable because I know where it's coming from. I can't support. To me, it's something that if we're going to do this, I think we have to do it right. And if we expose ourselves to having it go sideways on us, then in all likelihood, it'll go sideways on us. And the minute you leave space in that park for things to go on that you would rather not go on beside something as sacred as what's going on beside it, I think we're in for a problem. And we can't seem to control that problem now. So I don't know why in the future we would think that if we left it open, somehow people are going to act responsible and act respectful, because I don't think that's going to happen, to be quite candid. I think we're going to give ourselves a black eye by trying to do something very good. And I wouldn't want that to happen. And I think the only way that you can cover that is you cover the entire park. Then you control what goes on in that park while this memorial is being carried out. And you're in control of it. You're not at the mercy of somebody who might want to do what they want to do right beside the fence where people are trying to do something totally different. So, well, I get the intent, and I know that this is coming from the heart when it's coming from Jan on this issue. I respectfully, I disagree with the outcome that we would get, because I think we would have people doing things that we simply don't want to do. So as much as again, Jan, I'm sorry, I can't, I would love to be able to support you, but I think what would happen is we would create something that we were sorry we created, because other folks, outside influence that we don't control, would make it such. So I won't be supporting it, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. Councillor Carpenter, then Councillor McCurry. So Councillor Carpenter, you're next.
Yeah, I won't support it for the same reasons Councillor Slessa talked about. I was wondering what the amendment was going to be, and the amendment is to shrink the ability, the space where people can memorialize or pay their respects. I don't think that's necessary, quite frankly. We have other places. We've got Central Park, downtown core. We've got Harmony Square if people need to go places. I'm really not interested in having a memorial half fenced off or half the park and having somebody shooting up next to me while in their bench while I'm paying respects, memorializing our First Nations people and what has happened here. I think the original resolution, the reason it failed, the referral, was because we recognized that we need to do the whole park, and as we need to have an entrance and an exit that's organized and coordinated. Staff, I know it's costly for the fencing and for the security. Shrinking the park space is going to do nothing for the cost. It doesn't change the cost at all. Well, maybe a little bit on the fencing. Maybe there's $1,000 to be saved here on the fencing, but the cost of security is going to be the same. So I won't support this amendment. I thought it was going to be something different. Thank you.
Councilor McCurry.
Mayor, thank you. I'm very happy to support Jan's amendment. I look to Jan for guidance on this issue quite often. Part of my objection is the closure of a park to the public. And let's be quite frank and not beat around the bush. If we're concerned about vagrants and we're concerned about drug dealers and drug users and prostitution and having folks set up camp in our parks, we have staff and we have a police service to deal with those issues. And as I said earlier, there's a lot of people that don't go downtown, and there's a lot of people that certainly wouldn't go downtown in the evening. Because it's not just, you're not just faced with the issue of going there for quiet, respectful remembrance. You've got to get out of your car and walk there. So, fencing it off is one thing, but we've completely surrendered the downtown core to the influences that we do not like. And it's high time we took back our own property downtown. We've surrendered it, and I think this should be a real eye opener to us. That you've got to fence a piece of property off to allow people to pay their respects to kids that died in the custody in residential schools. Councillor Sless mentioned the Vietnam Memorial, but I pointed out that the Flight 93 Memorial, I think, is considerably closer to what we're going to see here. That's in Shanksville, PA. In Shanksville, PA, they're not at the mercy of vagrants and criminals. And they don't have a guard. They never had a guard at that site when it was in service, and nobody ever stole anything from there. And there were quite a lot of Canadian coins that were left there in testament to those folks that died on that airplane as well. So, I think Jan's right here. We want to set up a respectful perimeter that we can make sure is safe for folks to use, and it's not going to be subject to the kind of criminal activity that we see down there. And it's high time we did something about that. And recognize that it's a problem, and look to our police service. We have two people on council who are on the police services board, and I think it's time this community has a real good look at what our policing priorities should be, because they sure don't seem to be evident in the downtown core, Mayor.
Right, Councillor Van Tilburg.
I won't be supporting the amendment, but that's healthy discussion. As you can see, all of us councillors are moving around from issue to issue because we're all looking at this from the lens that we know. And so I understand that. And I believe Councillor Sless has made it pretty clear what the situation would be down there. And I you would be inviting and you wouldn't know it, but you could be inviting an element around that you just don't want. And while we can say we would just like to snap our fingers and have some of this go away, I know it's not. I know that's not going away. I know it's going to be not going to be there, but it may be across the road, the street. It might be just a little further down. But if you're trying to create a peaceful environment for those that want to come, safe and welcoming, then this is why we could have this discussion through the referral, or we're going to have it right now. And right now we're having it. So I'm just not agreeing with the intent, no matter how well intentioned.
Sure. Councilor Antosky, you're next.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Unfortunately, I also can't support the amendment for all of the reasons mentioned, but also from a practical standpoint, part of part of the issue with some fencing and security are the COVID restrictions. And if we start shrinking spaces down, that becomes more difficult. Of course, we have no way of estimating what the attendance is going to be like. But I don't think that shrinking it does anything positive. This is a temporary thing. I understand the intent, and I wish I could find myself in a spot to support it. But I just think we've got, along with the issues of respecting the project itself, but also the practical issues of COVID, that I think that we may just be creating consequences that we may not have wanted to deal with. So that's my opinion on that. Thank you.
Councillor Vanderstel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I respect your observations, and they are indeed correct. But it comes to this. This is our new urban reality in Canada. This is what every urban center is dealing with on a regular basis, in close proximity to all things we deem sacred, hallowed, and necessary in the core, including all of the services that we provide. There are people living right next to our buildings. That is our reality. That is a reality for many, many municipalities. There's nothing really different from your experience and my experience when we see people leaning away from the building structures, which they used to have provided shelter for them. They move directly to the sidewalks underneath the tarp. It doesn't matter where you place the fence. It doesn't matter where you place the border. It doesn't matter where you try to encapsulate a space of different use. The same types of use will happen whether they are, as Councillor Van Tilburg said, just a little further away or down the street. If you erect the fence around the perimeter of the park and stopping at the sidewalk, as you have seen over the last 5 months, you will see people using the fence to attach their tarps to, which are being handed out on a regular basis, I might add, okay? People will be using the fence to attach the tarp to and to sleep and carry on their life in immediate proximity to the area that you cordon off. You can do that anywhere you want. You can set the boundary anywhere you want in the park, but the behavior is going to continue unless there's a presence there to prevent it. So again, I'm going to speak to the opportunity here to provide a safe space, which we can man, we can post, we can look after, we can take care of. I'm going to ask again that you bend your minds to the idea that this is an opportunity to show respect and to show kindness and to provide an atmosphere and a space, regardless of what's happening around. I'll point this discussion as well to the long 2.5 year discussion about the Children's Memorial Garden on St. Paul Avenue. Many concerns were raised about the density and the speed of traffic in the area and how that would detract away from people using that site and the purpose of that site and the intentions of that site. I would argue that it doesn't matter where you place this site. If you go to the memorial, if you go to the Brant Memorial right across from the Armories on November 11th, you know exactly what you have in front of you. You have a controlled situation where people are meant to pause, reflect, and grieve in a very public place. But we take the time to cordon off the streets. We take the time to make sure that the police, fire, and ambulance are there. And even in a horrible situation, we've got a sniper situated on the roof of the Armories. So from my perspective and experience in the city of Brantford, if you think we can't control what happens downtown, you are mistaken. If you think we cannot provide a space where this type of long forgotten behavior, this much needed behavior of grieving can happen and where it is necessary to happen, if you think we cannot control that space, go ahead. Vote against reducing the size of the grieving space, of the respectful space. I'll leave it at that, Mr. Mayor.
All right, not seeing any other hands. Tanya, would you please take the vote on this?
Counselor Van Tilburg,
No.
the amendment to clause C of item 5.2 being memorial installation to honor of children of residential schools has failed on a recorded vote of 4 to 5. Those voting in favor, Councilors Vanderstel, Utley, McCreary, Martin. Those opposed, Councilors Sless, Carpenter, and Toski, Van Tilburg, Mayor Davis.
Okay, Councilor Carpenter, I'm pretty sure you were the first. You graciously deferred to Councilor Vanderstel, so.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'm just, as was spoken about earlier, I'd like to move an amendment to add item E, that council contribute $100,000 from the council contingency reserve fund. To save the evidence campaign in memory of the children that have lost their lives. And I get a seconder. My ward mate, Councilor Antosky, is a seconder. I just want to say the council contingency fund has $1.2 million in it. Was the last balance. It's generally a fund that's designed for council priorities, council's favorite things, or things that council thinks that they need to do that they deem important. And so I would just like I know this is $100,000 spending, but really is, as someone has said, 80,000 is for fencing, is for security, and I'd like to make a real contribution on behalf of the people to Save the Evidence campaign and in honor of the children. Thank you.
Seeing no other hands raised, Tanya would take the vote on this amendment.
Councilor Van Tilburg,
Yes.
thank you. The amendment to item 5.2 is carried on a recorded vote of 8 to 1. Those voting in favor is Councilor Vanderstel, Utley, Sless, McCreary, Carpenter, and Toski, Van Tilburg, Mayor Davis. Those opposed, Councilor Martin. It did receive the 2/3 required for that vote.
Thank you, Tanya. Councilor Sless, yes, I recall you mentioned a possible amendment, so.
I did. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And if I could ask Tanya to be so kind as to put up on the screen, if you could, please, Tanya. Without reading it, Mr. Mayor, everybody I think in the room can read. I'm quite sure we can. It's basically what we're doing, or what I'm suggesting we do as a council, is we petition the both levels of upper government to declare the second Monday in June a stat holiday across the country. I think it. I know there's been attempts in past to create a holiday in June. If there was ever a reason to have a stat holiday to recognize something that's important to all Canadians across the entire country, it would be this very issue. It goes beyond, I think, I guess I'm just reading exactly what she's got here, but in clause B, we're asking, as this is being sent out, that we request the assistance of Chief Mark Hill out on Six Nations as far as what this day should be called. I think it would only be appropriate that Six Nations name a holiday that is commemorating and acknowledging and something that happened to their community, that they should certainly play a large role in what that holiday should be called. I think if there's a time to do something like this, I think it would be now. So I would ask that members support this. It's asking both levels of government, but it's also being shared with AMO, FCM, and all the usual. So I think it's important that we do this. I think, again, it shows leadership throughout the country, being the neighbor of the largest reservation, that we think this is not only something important enough to memorialize, but something that the entire country should be behind as far as honoring and recognizing the loss of these children. So it's something, I think it's a way to memorialize it, that it's never forgotten and that it's always there. It's in the forefront. When you mention the name of a stat holiday, it's always attached to something, whether it be Victoria Day, it's honoring a queen. Well, I think that this would be the same type of thing, but honoring those children that lost their lives and in that tragic way. So I would hope members can support this. It's a request.
Yeah, and so Councillor, you're seconding, I take it, right? And you also want to speak to it? You're next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's a wonderful way of keeping this fresh in our minds every year on a single day, just to make us think about the unfortunate circumstances for children for the past, Aboriginal children for the past 150 years or so. And we need to keep that in our minds forever. And thank you, Councillor Slass, for raising this.
Yep. Councillor Antosky.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to thank Councillor Sless for bringing this forward. I think this is a wonderful idea. I think it's really important and certainly of national importance. And I just wanted to state that, once we get the feedback from Chief Hill and any other feedback we need in regard to this, that I would be honored to formally take this forward to FCM.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Vanderstelt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a primary example of respect. This is what I was hoping what would happen. I wasn't privy to any of the amendments that were coming forward ahead of this meeting, but this is the open and transparent, another example of open and transparent efforts to make sure that we show the kind of respect that is so desperately needed in this situation. Not only today, but as we go forward. Brantford will forever be on record for what we say today. Not only for 7 generations, but 14, 28 generations will have access to our words from today. Councillor Sless, I thank you for this. This goes a long way to help people take the time out to reflect in a helpful and meaningful way on a regular basis and educate themselves about this, the nature of this. So I support this 100%. Councillor Sless, well done.
Councillor McCurry.
Mayor, thank you. Well, National Indigenous Peoples Day actually is celebrated in Northwest Territories, the Yukon, I believe, and it's third week in June, perhaps. So I'm quite supportive of Councillor Sless's taking the initiative on this, because it is patterned elsewhere, and it's a worthwhile endeavor. I'm not so sure I support it being recognized as a stat holiday. As a former businessman, I'm sure Councillor Sless can appreciate that with every paid day off, that comes out of somebody's pocket. It sure isn't the government, and it sure isn't Brantford City Council. So I'm not so sure I like the statutory holiday, but I do like the fact that Councillor Sless is recommending that it be recognized and observed by Canadians.
All right. So not seeing any other raised hands. Tanya, can you please take the vote? This would be adding E, this particular amendment.
Councillor Van Tilburg,
Yes.
thank you. The amendment to item 5.2, memorial installation in honor of children of residential schools, has carried on a recorded vote of 9-0. Those voting in favor: Councillors Vanderstelt, Utley, Sless, McCurry, Martin, Carpenter, and Toski, Van Tilburg. Mayor Davis.
So just to recap, it's now been amended. So the way matters stand is we'd be taking a vote on A, B, and E, and C and D would be voted on separately. That's just kind of a running tally. So are there any other amendments that anybody wants to put in the floor? Councilor Bannister.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Tanya. Remember way back when we worked on another amendment for this? Just wondering if you can put that up on the screen as well. It is rather lengthy. I apologize for that, members of council, but it is something that I'm hoping to have supported.
Okay, so you've read it and confirmed, well, if you can read it and then we'll see if there's a seconder. So.
Sure, yes. A, the Council of the Corporation of the City of Brantford declared July as Regional Indigenous Education and Reflection Month in the City of Brantford. And that B, staff be directed to commence a public education campaign on Indigenous issues include but are not limited to the following. 1, the use of mutual agreeable public spaces. 2, inclusive and invitational educational experiences. 3, interactive and interpretive opportunities. 4, history, language, arts, culture, music, and dance. And that staff be directed to forward this resolution to the County of Brant to seek their interest in collaborating on the Regional Indigenous Education and Reflection Month, and that the mayor and city staff collaborate with Six Nations chief and staff, as well as Woodland Cultural Center, on the above Regional Indigenous Education and Reflection Month. And seeking a seconder, actually.
So Councillor Antosky seconding it.
And speaking to it further, Mr. Mayor, what this may do for our future, in keeping with the general spirit of what I've seen in amendments so far, in terms of educating the public, not only in Brantford, but in Brant County and nationally as well, is an opportunity to set the stage where we can have that open discussion and dialogue with all of the affected parties, all of the service partners, and all of the councils in the area that can set in motion a sequence of events that happen yearly, locations to be determined, not necessarily restricted to a park in the city, let's say, but additional areas, additional locations by invitation where we are encouraged to participate in an ongoing discussion, dialogue, and education curriculum, I would say, for anyone who is interested in the area. I would like to propose that this sets a precedent for a better relationship, a healthier relationship. I think it's a precursor. Showing support for this is a precursor to not only ensuring, as we've heard already today, that this horrible kind of thing never happens again, but it's also a precursor to a chance where our communities can heal together. Education has always been an extremely critical part of the last, I don't know how many decades of tireless work that has happened to that effect from so many different sources. You'll see the leaders of many First Nations and Aboriginal organizations who have tried over and over and over again to make sure that they connect with settlers, not just older settlers, but newer settlers as well. I mean, there's 300,000 people coming into Canada on a yearly basis, and they don't know the history. The history isn't taught, and I think it's very important that we set the stage. We enter into a dialogue, approved, of course, by First Nations people, to set the stage and the time and the place where this continuing education program can become part of our constant dialogue, our yearly dialogue, our daily dialogue. And I hope that council can support this in the same manner that they've supported so many other supportive amendments for people of Six Nations. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Van Tilborg, then Councillor Carpenter.
This is a wonderful amendment, and I'm glad to see it come forward. You know, the thing about the amendment that I find ironic to a degree and sad is that it's about educating the settlers. It was settlers that went out of their way to remove all history, identity, culture, which is why we're having this discussion today. And so not only for them to bring it back, and when you travel across to different native populations and you go to the powwows and stuff, that's actually a rebuilding of their culture. So to see that where we're going to offer lands, areas, resources to bring that culture around and educate us, and quite frankly, there's lots of people that don't know our history. It's not that well taught, not that popular. Particularly wasn't taught at all during my generation. Perhaps they've done it better with younger children. So I'm very happy to support this.
That's correct.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will certainly support this resolution or amendment. I'm looking at the Six Nations Polytechnique acquires the Brantford campus on our economic development page. You know, when we donated funds to Six Nations Polytechnique to acquire the Brantford campus, that passed council 6-5. So 5 people voted against that. Six Nations Polytechnique, I was there when the first Indigenous languages certificates were handed out at Six Nations Polytechnique on Six Nations Preserve. And speaking to a clan mother, they spoke both in Cayuga and in Mohawk, and she had tears streaming down her face. And I knew then that the languages coming back was the rebirth of their culture coming back. And we need to educate ourselves in our community on what's happened here over 150 years and how do we help our neighbor, our very good friend, come back. Part of our family, I think, is Councillor Vanderstel. Well put it. I think I like that actually phrase. And it was many, many years ago, and I know Councillor Sluss will remember this, that I passed a resolution that council supported wholeheartedly that we would meet regularly with the Six Nations Council. And for some reason, those meetings stopped happening because someone thought we needed to have an agenda with specific items on it. And the idea was that we just meet as human beings and as people and talk about each other and talk about our grandchildren, if that's what it is, or our children, and what our issues are and concerns are, just get to know each other as human beings. And I guess that failed because that doesn't seem to work as an agenda item. So the education is the first piece. I can't believe there's so many uneducated people in our community that don't understand or know what's gone on with the culture. And you know, the federal government's trying to wipe out a particular culture of a nation and those atrocities, and how we help work together to build that back. So I look to you, Mr. Mayor, to look at those options for bring our councils together and the county and the city and Six Nations together. I know you can do that as part of this education process. Maybe we do that in July. Maybe we get together for a barbecue next year. I don't know. Whatever it works that gets us together, that gets us talking about education and gets the people in the community talking about the truth. I'll never forget my grandson saying to me when they were talking about Black Lives Matter, they said, "Well, don't all lives matter?" And I said, "That's not what it's about." And I had to explain to him what Black Lives Matter really meant, not what some people on the far right would say. And we've heard those comments. I had to make sure he knew what the truth about what it meant. And you know, when we say every child matters, they do. So we need to educate. We got a lot of work to do. And, you know, you would think that our community would know better. And I think this is a great place to start. I think Councilor Vanderstel saying education starts here. It should start here. It should start with this council first, and with county council, and together with Six Nations Council, we can do it. So I will support this wholeheartedly, and I agree with this direction.
Yeah, I'll say a few words. And first of all, to the Tri-Council, which is the meetings of the elected council, Six Nations, our council, and Brant County Council. It's been subject to frequent discussion between myself, Cheat Hill, and Mayor Bailey. The complication has been COVID and being able to facilitate a meeting like this through COVID. But certainly with COVID clearly receding and hopefully in the rearview mirror before too long, it is something certainly we can move forward with. But respect to this particular resolution, I think much of what underlies the decisions we're making today, the amendments, is to do more than just talk about the history of Indigenous residential schools in our country, and do more than just express words of commemoration and sympathy, and doing more, taking concrete action. I think the intent of today's meeting is all about that. doing more, and doing more than just something that's done on Canada Day or not done on Canada Day, and something that happens regularly and over a period of time, and is done with a platform as a catalyst to education, and because that is the foundation of understanding and better relationships. I mean, we've seen that. You see that with other groups and organizations, the Black History, which goes for a month, Pride, which goes for a month, Seniors Month, over a month. And I think to really do something effectively, you can't do it as a day or even as a week. And so this is why I particularly like this resolution or amendment, and I can happy to support it, because it's going to each year cause us to think, reflect, what can we do to improve the relationship with Six Nations of the Grand River, to better educate the residents of Brantford who may not be as familiar with our long history. I mean, the genesis of this community is between the Six Nations of the Grand River, those peoples, and the earliest settlers here. It was to begin with, my understanding of the history, it was a very mutually beneficial relationship. Both having come out of fighting the American War of Independence. And, unfortunately, at times, we've lost that spirit here. And I think this is a way to begin doing this on a regular annual basis. And it's also a message for our staff to help and assistance in the planning of this particular month. And of course, doing that in full collaboration and cooperation with the Woodland Cultural Center and the Six Nations of the Grand River, as Councillor Vanderstelt says, taking the lead from them. But it begins with us asking, we'd like to do more, we want to do more. What do you think? Would you like to be involved? So it's a great start. Maybe this year we're what, 2 days away from July, but I think it's going to set the stage for, I'm hoping, a much improved and better relationship with the people of the Six Nations of the Grand River, starting with education. And more than that, obviously. So I'll call the vote on this amendment then. Tanya, please.
Councillor Van Tilburg?
Yes.
Thank you. I'll note that. The amendment for item 5.2, memorial installation in honor of children of residential schools, was carried on a recorded vote of 9-0. Those voting in favor, Councillors Vanderstelt, Utley, Slosson, McCurry, Martin, Carpenter, and Toski, Van Tilburg, Mayor Davis.
Okay, any further amendments? Not seeing any. So what we have then is a resolution that is A, B, C, D. I guess it's E, F. Is that right, Tanya?
Through the mayor. So yeah, if you look at the numbering, it does go all the way to K at this point.
Yeah.
But I believe C and D were the only ones called for separate. Then I'll make sure that the numbering and the formatting aligns in the recommendation when it's complete.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So speaking opportunities before we start taking the vote on these, the resolution as amended. So, Councillor McCurry.
Mayor, I have another amendment to introduce a little clarity to the resolution that's before us, and it relates to item C. And you may recall that I did make an inquiry earlier about the physical nature of the memorial. And what I would suggest is to more accurately represent what we are doing. If you look at clause C, you will see the phrase, for the purpose of creating a memorial. And I would like to change that, Mayor, seeking a seconder, to read, for the purpose of operating a memorial space, which I think more accurately describes what our intent is. And I see I have a seconder in Councilor Vanderstelt.
Councillor Vanderstelt, second.
Thank you.
Tanya, do you have that wording?
I did capture it. Just give me one moment and I can display it for you.
While we're getting that, any further comment, Councilor McCurry?
Mayor, yes, thank you very much. I think it's important to recognize the analogy that Councillor Sless made about the things that are going to be left at this space by folks who are coming there to observe some quiet reflection. The memorial will be the legacy of what comes out of that space. And I think that we're going to have to consider that, like we saw with the Flight 93 Memorial in Pennsylvania, that the items left behind are going to have to find a home somewhere. It cannot be in perpetuity in Victoria Park. And we're going to eventually have to recognize that there's going to have to be a receiving facility, whether that be Woodland Cultural Center or whether that be some other organization. But that's where the permanent memorial is going to arise from what we're doing on what we're anticipating to be a temporary basis at Victoria Park.
Yeah, I think the wording is, from my perspective, it's great. It's provides clarity to it. So any other speakers to the amendment? Seeing none, Tanya, if you please take the amendment to sub C.
Certainly, just confirming the seconder was Councillor Martin, correct?
Yeah.
Councillor
That was Councillor Vanderstel.
My apologies. Thank you. I just want to make sure I captured that correctly. I'm ready when you are, Mayor Davis.
Yes, and please take the vote, administer the vote, Tanya.
Mayor, if I may interject.
Yes.
Just a correction to the wording. The wording should be for the purpose of operating a memorial space.
Right.
For the purpose of.
That's what I recall you saying, so I think that's correct. So Tanya, can you just remove the underlining from purpose?
Certainly. So I struck out an extra word. My apologies. I'll correct that. Would you like me to restart the vote? It's the only way I could correct it on screen.
Yeah, I think we better restart the vote.
Certainly. I will do that.
Mr. Mayor, you have a trophy to present at 5:30. If you need me to take over the chair, I'd be pleased to do that.
5:30? I thought it was 6:30.
5:30. Unless I got the wrong time.
I've got 6:30. Yes, I think if it goes too much longer, I think I might ask Councillor.
Okay.
All right. So Tanya, so we can take the vote then. You've left the word purpose in.
Councillor Van Tilburg.
Yes.
The amendment to clause C of item 5.2 is carried on a recorded vote of 8-1. Those voting in favor, Councillors Vanderstel, Utley, Sless, McCurry, Martin, and Toski, Van Tilburg, Mayor Davis. Those opposed, Councillor Carpenter.
Okay. Any other amendments? Councillor Carpenter, do you have an amendment in mind?
No, I just wanted to thank you, Mr. Mayor, for taking the mayor's prerogative and organizing this meeting on such short notice with staff and coming up with the solutions that you have today with staff. I just want to make sure, as one member of council, I appreciate the work here.
Yeah. And I would thank council members for having a very respectful and informative dialogue and discussion this afternoon. It's been all different viewpoints have been presented on almost every single amendment, and I think it's been this is a high point for our council in terms of debate and discussion, and under the most difficult of circumstances because we just didn't have the time. Lastly, in case I have to leave very quickly, there is a march that Councillor Carpenter referred to earlier. It's beginning, I believe, at the Civic Center on July 1st at noon, going to the Woodland Cultural Center, the Mohawk residential school. I do plan on attending, and I invite any other members of council or members of the public. It is a peaceful friendship march, so I'll leave it at that. So any further amendments anybody wishes to make? Councillor McCurry.
Mayor, at the risk of extending our discussion for another hour, I'm going to suggest that we consider a location other than Victoria Park. There are a great many places in the city of Brantford where we could do this in a more peaceful and respectful manner and would not require the closing of a city facility. And I'm not sure how I want to word this, Mayor, but I could see us being able to move forward with the bulk of this resolution and reconsidering the location, which could perhaps be reconsidered later this week upon the declaration of another emergency meeting. So my amendment would be that Clause C, we would remove the wording Victoria Park, and in its place, it would say, for the purpose of creating a memorial at a location to be decided, which would then allow for some input by ward councilors and staff to look at other options. The fallback, of course, would be Victoria Park, and we'd lose no more than a few days, which is what it's going to take to set this up. Seeking a seconder for that.
A seconder? I'm not seeing a seconder. Sorry, is there a seconder? Can you physically raise your hand? Yeah, okay, Councillor Martin is. So I'm gonna, before we get into this, I've got to make 2 calls in reference to what Councillor Utley talked about. Councillor Utley, can you take over right now, and I may be able to come back? Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to have to leave in about 7 minutes just to.
Can I raise a point of order, please?
Point of order, Councillor?
By removing and looking for another location, that's the utmost, that's the same as doing a deferral. So we've already voted on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Council, I'm going to rule your amendment out of order. Councillor Sless. I'm sorry, Councillor Van Tilburg, you had your, you were talking.
Yes, I just wanted to make it clear that I have to leave in about 6 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sless.
No, I took my hand down. I was trying to get clarity. I wasn't sure exactly what the amendment was, but the amendment was to take everything we've done today and then hold on to it and look for another location to do it. I'm not clear on what the amendment is. Could we get it up on the screen? Would that be possible?
That's not necessary. It was ruled out of order.
I appreciate that, Co-Chair.
I think there's time for us to make an amendment to Victoria Park if necessary. We're doing things very much on the fly right now, and I'd feel a lot more comfortable if we had other options in front of us. I'm not sure if that's acceptable to you, Councillor McCreary, or not.
I'm not sure what you're not sure of, Mr. Chair.
Well, I would say, I think we're doing a lot of things on the fly here, and I think our intentions are all good. But I think, you're offering, or it's at least suggesting, that we look at other options besides Victoria Park.
Well, let me suggest in place of Victoria Park, we offer up the lobby at City Hall.
Oh, I think I'll rule that out of order as well. But thank you. Well, it's a possibility. Councillor Martin.
I move we call the question.
Okay. Before we do that, Councillor Carpenter.
I second that.
Okay. So, Madam Clerk, will you call the question, please?
Is this on the whole motion as amended? Is it, Mr. Chair?
I believe so. Tanya, can you confirm that, please?
Certainly. So the first initial vote would be for the call to question, which does put the entire resolution as amended in front of you for deciding whether or not you want to continue debate or call the question. If it's voted in the affirmative, then we would start with clauses D, C, and D as requested for a separate vote, then all remaining after that.
Okay, so let's call the question. Thank you.
Councillor Van Tilborg?
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Davis?
Yeah, sorry, just want to clarify, just jump back in. Is it, we're voting on C and D? Is that what we're voting on?
So the call, it was a call to question was.
Oh, okay.
So that
Okay.
you just sat down at the call of the vote, so I did include you.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Thank you. So is that, thank you. The vote to call the question has carried on a recorded vote of 8-1. Those voting in favor, Councillors Vanderstel, Utley, Sless, Martin, Carpenter, Antosky, Van Tilborg, Mayor Davis. Those opposed, Councillor McCurry.
Noting my conflict, right?
Okay. So Madam Clerk, can you just clarify that we voted on the bylaws?
No, so from here, we actually
Well,
need to
they-
vote then on clauses C and D because there was a
C and
request to
D.
separate
Okay.
that. And then there is all remaining clauses. And Councillor Wall, all the votes will note that your conflict, you do not participate in a debate or voting in the matter.
Okay,
Thank you,
Councillor
Tanya.
McCurry, you have your hand up.
Yeah, so I can jump back in now if you want. I'm happy
Okay.
to sit on the
Fine,
side.
thank you.
Okay, so Tanya, let's call the vote then on clauses C and D.
Councillor Van Tilborg?
Yes.
Thank you. Clauses C and D as amended is carried on a recorded vote of 7-2. Those voting in favor, Councillors Vanderstel, Utley, Sless, Carpenter, Antosky, Van Tilborg, Mayor Davis. Those opposed, Councillor McCurry, Councillor Martin.
Okay, so Tanya, so we're now calling the vote on the balance of the items, and I think you told us you've got them. You can show them all to us at once.
Certainly through the
There's
mayor, I do
four-
not.
There was 4 amendments, right? I think 3 or 4.
There were multiple amendments. It does go all the way to K at this point. I don't have a collective that I can show you on the screen, but C
Okay.
and D have been disposed of, so all remaining clauses would be from here.
So we got A and B, we know what those are. And so C, D, so what's E? Just.
E would be reflective of the $100,000 donation.
Yeah, yeah.
F through 2 and G is the day with the statutory direction item. Then H through 2 and K is the day declaration.
Right, okay. All
Sorry,
right,
the education component,
Right.
sorry.
The-
Yes.
The amendment Councillor Vanderstel put on the floor, right? Okay,
Correct.
so, all right, so let's call the vote, please, on the balance of the items.
Councillor Van Tilborg?
Yes.
Thank you. All remaining clauses have carried on a recorded vote of 9-0. Those voting in favor, Councillors Vanderstel, Utley, Sless, McCurry, Martin, Carpenter, Antosky, Van Tilborg, Mayor Davis.
All right, so I think we're now into the bylaw, because there's no notices of motion. We've dealt with the resolutions, and so we're into bylaws. So Councillor Vanderstel, I believe you've got the motion for first and second reading to confirm.
Mayor Davis, can I ask for a point of clarification?
Yes.
Tanya, is the bylaws we're voting on tonight is going to be a conflict for me, correct?
Councillor Wall, through the mayor to Councillor Wall, it's up to you to decide where your conflict would reside. This is a confirming bylaw, confirming the proceedings for tonight.
Excellent. So yes, then I will, I don't know if I have to declare again, but yes, I'm okay. I'm sorry. It's, it's complicated.
Certainly.
Thank you.
So you're declaring your same conflict and you're absenting yourself from this vote, correct?
Based upon my perception and the facts that I know, yes.
Okay, all right, so noting that, Tanya, would you, Councillor Vanderstel, I believe you've got the motion then for the first and second reading of the relevant bylaws for today's.
I do, seeking a seconder, Mr. Mayor.
Rutley has indicated he'll second.
Yes, thank you. First and second reading, that leave be given to the mover and seconder to introduce the following bylaws for first and second reading. 152 2021 bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the City of Brantford with respect to the special meeting held June 28th, 2021, a historic day. Thank you.
Any discussion on first and second reading? Anybody? Not seeing any. All right, Tanya, would you please take the vote on first and second reading?
I do believe Councillor Martin, I know that Councillor Van Tilborg was needing to leave, but I do believe Councillor Martin has also left the meeting. I don't see him in the list, so just wanted to confirm that it's not a tech. Okay. First and second reading of bylaws was carried on a recorded vote of 7-0. Those voting in favor, Councillors Vanderstel, Utley, Slash, McCreary, Carpenter, and Toski. Mayor Davis.
So third reading. The third reading, I don't have that, Tommy.
I got it.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Moved by myself and seconded by my ward mate, Councillor John Sless, that bylaw 152-2021 be taken as read a third time, be finally passed and signed by the mayor and clerk.
Any discussion on third reading? Seeing none, Tanya, would you please take the vote?
The third and final reading of the bylaw has carried on a recorded vote of 7-0. Those voting in favor, Councillors Vanderstel, Utley, Slash, McCreary, Carpenter, and Toski. Mayor Davis.
With that, I think that brings the meeting to an end, so I can sign the bylaw and look forward to seeing you, hopefully some of you on July 1st at the Civic Center.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, good meeting.
Yeah, one variant today, but 16 Delta, so we need to be concerned. Get your shot, get vaccinated.